All right. We are in business. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Physical Geology 1403. My name is Josh Hart. I will be your teacher this semester. And the only one if you keep taking geology. I am the only geology professor here at Odessa College. So whether you're taking this online or in person, you take it from me. Gavin, right in the corner. Could you do me a solid and close that door? For security reasons, I have to keep the door closed, especially if I have high school students in my classroom. All right. Before we jump into all of this, floor is open at any time to ask any kind of questions. Before I jump into my spiel, do you have any questions? No? Oh, good, because I haven't told you anything yet. Oh, yeah, what?
I like your rocks.
You like my rocks?
It's not a question.
That's not a question, but I'll take it, yes.
I like the snake.
You like the snake on my neck? Thank you. I'll take that too. Yes.
What should we call you? Mr. Joshua or Mr. Hart?
Mr. Hart, Professor Hart. You could call me Josh. Any of those things works.
All right.
You can call me whatever you want as long as it's not late for dinner. I'm kidding. I'm always late for dinner. But it would be weird if you called me that because we won't be having dinner together. All right. Any other questions? No? All right, let's start. This is me. It's kind of a dated picture of me. This picture is about a year and a half old, but this is me and my family. This is my wife, Jessica, my daughter, Isla, my oldest son, Declan, and my last and youngest child, Liam. Declan started second grade this week. It's crazy. She's in pre-K, and he just started at Mom's Day Out. So my wife has 2 days of the week to herself for the first time in recorded history, right? So it's an exciting time for us and my family. I got my bachelor's degree in geology from Brigham Young University in Rexburg, Idaho. My master's degree in geology from University of Louisiana at Lafayette. And something I don't have on there, but I probably should, is I'm halfway through my PhD in Earth Systems Science and Policy through the University of North Dakota. I'm doing their online program so I can stay down here and keep teaching at the same time. My dissertation subject is lunar policy, trying to help establish the rules that people will live by when they go to the moon here by the end of our decade. Fingers crossed. That's when everyone's planning on being up there again. Okay. I have a very wide work history. I've worked in gold mines. I've worked as a paleontologist. Most of my research is actually in paleontology. So I've worked with dinosaurs and mammals and turtles and fish and bugs and microorganisms and all of that. That will come up plenty in this class. I'll talk about all that experience there. I've worked in museums. I've worked in the oil and gas industry. And now I am teaching. Because it turns out that spending 90 hours a week in the field isn't great when you have a family. So I needed a little change of pace when we had my kids. So here I've been teaching. This is my, actually just wrapped up the end of my 5th year. So I just started my 6th year teaching at Odessa College. It's pretty crazy. This is the longest I've ever been in one place, actually, the 5 years I've been here. I was born in the Navy. My dad was Navy for 23 years. So we moved every year or two. And then after I moved out of the house, I just kind of kept that going. Kind of got that gypsy bug, you can kind of call it. I love traveling. I love seeing the world. So yeah, 5 years here is the longest I've ever been in any one place. Let's see. I like doing a lot of stuff. I like fossil hunting. I like mineral hunting. I like playing certain genres of video games, right? I grew up playing Halo, so first-person shooters are close to my heart. I don't have that much time to play them anymore, but I still like them. I think that's about it for me. Any questions that you want to ask about me or my experience or anything like that before I move on? Yeah.
Are you still in the Navy?
No. So my dad was Navy. My dad served in the military. I was only ever dependent. I was planning on joining the military as soon as I turned 18, but there were some political things that kind of soured it. My dad got denied promotion 4 times because he was too good at his job and his commanding officers liked taking credit for his work. And I decided that's not how I wanted to live my life. I didn't want to be subject to other people like that. So I decided not to join the military, although I do believe it is still an honorable sacrifice and an honorable career for anyone that has that plan. All right. Thank you for that question. you can ask questions at any time. All right, this is my philosophy, this is my policy. An unasked question is a waste, okay? There is no dumb question. The only dumb question is the one you never ask. How about that, okay? Please ask your questions. I guarantee if you have a question, someone else in the room has that question. And also, as an added factor, there are about 70 other students watching this class online, okay? I record every single one of these lectures, and it will go on YouTube, so be careful what you say, right? And there are going to be about 70 to 80 students that watch this lecture later on this week, okay? And they will be participating via YouTube and all of that, leaving comments, and I'll be answering their questions there. But if you have a question, I guarantee out of the 90-something students that are going to watch this lecture this semester, you're not the only one that has that question. So do that other person a solid and ask it. All right? Great. I will turn the time over to you a lot to ask questions because I want to pull that out of you, okay? You can't learn unless I give stuff to you, and I only know what to give to you if you tell me what you need. Cool? Great. So let's talk about the class a little bit. This is how you're going to contact me. That's my email, jhart@odessa.edu. That is the primary method of communication. That is how you should contact me, okay? Blackboard Messenger, hate that thing. Don't touch it. Don't use that. Email, always. Blackboard Messenger loses messages in the ether, okay? They're just gone, floating somewhere over Cambodia, okay? In an internet knot half the time, okay? I'll have a student email me and say, hey, how come you didn't answer me from the thing I sent you a week ago on Blackboard? And be like, I'll go back and I'll look and be like, it's not there. That's why I didn't know you needed help before the exam, right? So please email me instead. That way we can avoid any of that confusion, okay? We have, it says variable. That's because I use the same PowerPoint for all the sections I teach. This section, this class is going to be meeting, this in-person class, so online students, obviously it doesn't apply to you, is going to be meeting 9:30 to 12:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, okay? I say 12:30. It's like 12:20, I think, is approximately when it ends, okay? But the last hour of every class is going to be dedicated to lab time, and that's also a little variable. The first few lectures, like this one today, and the one that we have on Thursday, are going to be long enough we don't really get much lab time, and I'm not even assigning you a lab today, so don't worry about that. You don't know anything yet, right? And then there will be other lectures later on where I'll only talk for like an hour, and we'll have an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to work on lab, which is going to be great because you're going to want to catch up. All right? So that'll be a little bit variable, but those are the general ratios of lecture to lab time we're going to have. Okay? Your syllabus is on Blackboard. Hopefully all of you had the opportunity to go through that. There's a lot of useful information on there. Things like how I grade and everything like that. This is also out of date. There are no required textbooks. So any of you that saw that and started panicking, don't worry about it. This is an OER class. That means I provide all of the resources that you will need to you on Blackboard, or I give you the links to go and find it yourself. Okay? There are no required texts that you need to buy for my classes. The textbook is going to be on Blackboard. I built a website specifically for this class, and it hosts that textbook as well as every other assignment that you're going to need to do in the class. It's also all on Blackboard, but the hard copies themselves are on the website as well for your review if you like. There's also a few frequently asked questions, a few external links that take you to useful places on that website that you can use as well. Okay. This is what our lecture schedule is going to look like in general. This varies by semester, by time of year, because there are obviously going to be holidays and whatnot that get in the way of our general schedule, but this is how it's going to flow typically. Okay, we meet twice a week, which means that we're going to have 2 lectures. Now those lectures are either going to be straight up new information, or if we have an exam coming up, it's going to be exam review, because I want you guys to ask your questions. Okay, so today is our introduction. On Thursday, it will be chapter 2, over matter and minerals. Okay, and then it's going to be igneous rocks, and then volcanoes, so on and so forth. Week 1, week 1, week 2, week 2, week 3, week 3, all the way down to week 8 with, exam reviews coming in there. All right? Labs are going to follow the same general schedule with a little variation here, obviously, as needed. I reserve the right to delay a lab if the class in general is kind of struggling with it and we need more time. I do that all the time, okay? My goal here is for you to succeed, and I'd rather that take precedence over holding to a hard and fast timetable. Now, obviously, all of us are held to the same ultimate timetable. We cannot go past week 8, okay? But if there's 20 of you in my class and 15 of you are just not getting lab 1, then I'll just push the due date back a week so we can all keep working on it together. However, that just backloads more work for us. So just bear that in mind. The one date I cannot move is the end of the term. Okay? I'll work with you on every other date except for exams as much as possible. Those are pretty hard and fast for me. Labs, discussion boards, other assignments, I'm really flexible on those. Exams are the only thing I don't let you take redos of. I'll talk more about exams here in a minute. But everything else, I'm going to be as flexible as you need. All right? Okay, let's talk about the grades. Who hates exams? I can have my hand up. I'm still in college, right? I've been in college for 11 years. I did that math the other day. I've been in college for 11 years. It's good. It's good. I love it. But I still hate exams, especially the timed ones, because I can't think about anything else except those seconds ticking away. So because I hate exams so much, and I hate taking exams so much, I have a little bit of empathy for you guys that also feel that way. So only 50% of the credit in my class is in exams. The rest is tied up in the other assignments. What does this mean? That means that if you are not good at taking exams, you can still pass my class. You just put the extra effort into every other assignment. If you can get passing, just barely passing on an exam, you don't need to be an A. As long as you are really nailing every other assignment, you'll still pass my class. You might not get an A in the class, but you'll still pass, okay? And the same thing is also true. If you're really good at exams, but you're just not getting the labs, you work extra hard on those exams, and no matter what you get on the labs, you'll still pass my class, okay? And I have the content balanced like this so that both groups of people can still succeed and still walk away with the information that will transform your lives as you understand my class content, okay? So that's the distribution here. So 50% in exams, 20% in discussion boards, 30% in labs, and then there's a little bit of extra credit as well that can help offset a little bit of that difference. 5% of that extra credit comes from your notes. I am huge on note taking, okay? I believe in what I call the 3-part learning method, okay? You hear it, you write it, you share it, okay? If I told you chickens are blue, y'all are going to look at me like, what is this guy saying right now? He's nuts, right? But then you go home and you probably wouldn't remember I said that. But if you wrote down in your notes right now, teacher said chickens are blue, he is nuts, okay? You go home and you're going to review your notes later and you're going to remember that I said that and then remember how weird I am again, okay? That's a win. But if then you go to your dinner with your family and you're talking around the table and you're like, you know, my teacher told me chickens are blue today. It's in your long-term memory because guess what? You're bringing it up yourself. You don't need a reminder, okay? So that's that 3-part learning method, and I try and implement that as much as possible. I can't really control who you share this information with. I can only encourage that. But I can help you with note-taking. So to incentivize good note-taking, you get extra credit for it, okay? Now, 5% doesn't seem like a whole lot, but there are 1,000 total points in this class. Okay, and 50 points of those have the potential to come from extra credit. Or I should say 50 points more have the potential to come from extra credit. When you take into account that exam 2 is 100 points, and all of a sudden we're talking about 50 more points of extra credit, if you bomb exam 2, all of a sudden you might have an A or a B in exam 2, because I throw it on your lowest exam at the end of the semester. Take good notes. I am strongly incentivizing you to do that, okay? Now, if that's not sweet enough, I also let you use your notes on the exams. They're open note, not open book. Believe me, I've gotten very good at finding people that use inappropriate resources for exams. I'll just put this out there right now. If I catch that you are using an inappropriate resource or plagiarizing notes or anything on an exam, I give you 1 warning and give you a 0 on that assignment. If it happens again, you are removed from my class and I inform the college of your status. And they can do with you what they will. We are pretty strict on the no plagiarizing and no cheating here at OC, especially as AI is developing. We're getting even stricter on it. We have methods of figuring it out. All right, so just do yourself a favor. The only thing you should ever need to succeed are your notes, because if they're that strong, you will do just fine. Okay? Extra credit and use them on exams. Boom, notes, awesome. Go for it. I'm not going to nitpick your note-taking strategies, by the way. However, you do need to submit them so that I know to give you the extra credit at the end of the semester. So your notes are going to be going into a folder in every lecture in Blackboard. So lecture 1 today has a submission folder for lecture 1 notes. Whenever those are complete, go ahead and submit them there. I don't care if they're handwritten and you took a picture of it, or if they're digitally typed. The only thing I will say is, if you use a Mac or any other kind of Apple technology to take your notes, you're going to have to convert those to a PDF, because at OC we use Windows software, and a Mac default saves them to a Mac file. Okay? So it'll be a .pages file, which Windows software cannot open. But you can choose to save it as a PDF and then upload it that way so I can see it. All right? Your notes have to be your work, not mine. That means you cannot just take my PowerPoint and submit it as your notes. They have to be your notes. Okay? Any PowerPoints of mine, any work of mine that you submit as yours is, guess what? Plagiarizing, and I disqualify those notes for extra credit. Any questions on that? Great. The other 1% of extra credit, that's tied up in the first day assignments that are due by the end of this week. Things like the syllabus quiz, there's actually something called first day assignment on there. So you'll go on Blackboard and you'll see all of these things, then you'll fill them out, and then as they're kind of just auto-graded, okay? And then you'll just default get 1% more extra credit, 10 more points at the end when I'm tallying up your final grades. All right, any questions about the grading strategies or the types of assignments that you'll get in this class? Yeah?
What would the labs consist of? Like, could you give us an example?
Yes. Okay. So the labs, for the most part, are going to be mineral and rock identification. You are in physical geology. Physical geology is learning what the world, what our planet is made out of. It's made out of materials, hard materials for the most part, as it turns out, that we typically refer to as rocks. And so you are going to be learning how to identify the most common types of minerals and rocks that are formed by those minerals that you could run across in the wild on any given day. That's what most of the labs are going to be about. I say most because Lab 5 is different. That one's about reading maps. But we'll get to that at the end of the semester. By the way, I am a walker as I talk, in case you haven't noticed. I'm kind of pacing back and forth. That's why I have a microphone attached to me and a camera that follows me. My camera's on a gimbal, a rotating gimbal, and it has a basic AI built into it. So I've taught it hand gestures, so it can zoom in on me, zoom out. I point at an object, it'll go to that thing. So if I'm making weird gestures at the camera, it's because I'm trying to highlight something for my online students to see. Okay? But I'm active, right? I don't sit and talk well, okay? Which is why I'm up here just kind of pacing. Okay. So what's the point of taking this class? Well, you're going to learn a whole bunch of things about science. I'm assuming you all have taken some science already. Chemistry, anyone? Good. Most of you. Biology. Good. Any physics? A fair amount of you. Nice. Good deal. So you already know in general how science works. Well, we're going to be diving into that a lot more. The core of this class is essentially to teach you how to think scientifically, to think critically, and how to apply those things to the world around you. Okay? I'm using geology as more or less a vehicle to teach you scientific thinking, which is what most science classes ultimately plan to do. Okay? If you can think scientifically, you can figure a lot of things out for yourself. All right? So that's the point. That's the objective here. to develop those skills in your head, okay? And give you the opportunity to practice them. So I've got some standards here. Obviously, there's going to be no cheating. There are a variety of cheating ways you can cheat. Okay, that includes copying answers. That includes plagiarism. If you have any doubts if something is plagiarism, you can always ask me. I'm never going to for saying you almost plagiarized. But if you come to me and say, hey, I'm not sure, is this plagiarism? Then I'll put you on the straight path, and there's nothing wrong. Okay, there's nothing wrong. You asked me a question, and I just told you I love it when you ask me questions, right? Okay. This is a personal rule that I ask you to hold to. Please refrain from using any foul language in my class. And that also includes in the YouTube comments as well for my online students, by the way. Why do I have this rule? Well, you are in a class of science. You have entered the college world. The whole point of going to college is to elevate yourself, to improve your intellectual capability, to improve your communication skills. Foul language, swearing, is a way of communication that people use when they don't know any other way to communicate. They don't know any other ways to express themselves. By entering this path of college education, you have committed to learn better ways. And I am encouraging that in my class, within the bounds of my class, by asking you to please refrain from what I consider to be unintelligent ways of communication. Is that fair? Also, please, no phones whenever possible. I completely understand if there's, like, my mom's calling. She never calls. This might be important. Can I step outside? Sure. Go for it. Always ask me first, though. Okay? And please don't use them in class unless I specifically say you can. There may be a time when I say, hey, look this up, and then give me feedback on what you see. But otherwise, please be respectful. No phones in class. Let me back up here for a second. If you are a high school student and you need to step out in the hallway, you must always stay within view of me in these windows. It's been pressed extremely hard to us that we are responsible for you for these blocks of time that you are in our classroom. If you were to step out in the hallway and then just disappear, guess who they come for? Me. Moi. I don't want to answer for that. If I say, hey, yeah, they got a phone call from their mom, you got to stay there. And you definitely can't leave campus without telling me and then informing the front desk of your particular school. How many OC Tech students do I have? None. All OCA? Great. Any other high schools represented here? I know that sometimes I get some Permian and OHS that wander in. Okay? No. Okay, all OCA. Well, whether you're with OC Techs or OCA, the high school clerk has to be the one to tell me that, and they have to tell me that you have been summoned back to the high school. Your mom cannot get on the phone with me and say, hey, my student needs to come home with me right now. They need to contact the high school, and the high school has to tell me, I have no verification that's your mom. I don't know your mom. I'm sure she's a nice lady. But I don't know if that's your mom. I don't know who it is that could be picking you up, and I'm responsible for you. So you need to let the high school know, and the high school front desk has to call me and tell me, yes, this person needs to get picked up. We have verified that this is an actual thing going on. Okay? They have to tell me. The front desk can't tell you, and then you tell me. You have to hand me the phone, and they have to tell me if they're on the phone with you. Okay? I know there's a lot of hoops here. There's a lot of stuff we have to go through, but it's legal stuff, and you all are still minors, which means that we are very responsible for you. Okay? Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. I will always answer your emails within 24 hours of you sending them, unless it is the weekend, because my family is priority on the weekend. And if I'm off in San Antonio or something with my family, or even just hanging out on the couch with my kids, I might notice that you send an email, but put my phone down until that evening to answer it. Or maybe even the next day, because the weekend is for me and my family. But if it's Monday through Friday, I promise I'm always going to answer your emails within 24 hours unless something weird comes up, okay? That's my policy. And so far, I've been able to stick pretty well to it, okay? Also, holidays, understandably, my family comes first. I can't even remember the last time I didn't answer student emails, even on a holiday in the evening. So it'll probably still happen, but I do reserve the right to give it a little more than 24 hours in those cases. And then finally, boundaries. You guys are in my class, and I love that you're in my class. I hope that in the coming weeks, we get a fun dynamic here. I love it when my students feel so comfortable with me that, yeah, they'll call me Josh. They'll come visit me in my office, which, by the way, is behind that wall, okay? They want to come see the animals. This is just one. I've also got a lizard and 2 turtles in my office if any of you want to come visit, okay? You want to hang out in here? You want to do studies? You don't even have to study geology in here. This is a space for you, okay? If you just need a quiet place to study, you just wander right on in here, and that's that. Use it. I love when we get a good dynamic going. But I do need to caution you, especially those of you that are still minors. That's as far as it can go, okay? I am always honored when a student feels so comfortable with me that they want my advice in something. Hey, I just broke up with my girlfriend. Can I talk to you about it? I feel honored, but that's not my role. And even though I usually want to say, yes, let's talk about it because I care about you, I'm not going to. There have to be boundaries between instructor and student. I will, however, direct you towards people that can help you. We have so many wonderful student counselors that can help walk you through hard times, give you advice. But this is as far as our dynamic, our personal friendship can go. We'll have fun times in class. We'll talk about non-geology related stuff all the time. Oh my gosh, the number of tangents I go on in class, you won't even believe it, okay? But we still need to keep track of those boundaries. All right? Thank you. Any questions before we get started on the actual content, now that I've been talking for 30 minutes? Yeah?
Is that a real snake?
This is a real snake. Do you want to hold him? No?
Can I hold it?
Yeah. This is Diablo. He is a 2-year-old ball python. He's probably going to get about 4 feet long. Oh, he's wrapped around my microphone. Come on, kiddo. There we go. He's wrapped around my microphone. Okay, there we go. He's going to get about 4 feet long when he's full grown. He eats a small to medium-sized rat every 2 weeks. I feed them to him live. I'm trying to keep him as close to his natural metabolism and hunting instincts as possible. He will not hurt you, by the way. Ball pythons are very gentle. Just try not to go near his head. You might notice that he's got holes around his face. Those are pits. They are heat-sensing organs. So if your hand comes close to his head, all it sees is this big hot thing is coming at my face, and he's going to jerk back. So try and avoid that. But otherwise, he's super sweet. He's a constrictor. He doesn't have fangs. Okay, he got tiny little teeth, but all I do is just grab the mouse long enough for him to wrap around it and squeeze it to death. I was wearing him around my neck a moment ago. I'm not worried. It takes 75 pounds of pressure to crush a human windpipe. Don't ask how I know. And he can't get that far, okay? It would take a big snake to get that far. All right? Any questions about the snake? Feel free to pass him around to anyone that feels so inclined. And if any of you have never touched a snake before, this is the best opportunity you're going to get because that is just the sweetest snake you're ever going to meet, okay? All right. Any other questions for me?
They don't like you, but
No? Okay. Well, let me just start off by giving you one more little tidbit here. Geology, like I said earlier, is the study of the Earth. Okay? But the same concepts of physics and chemistry, and possibly even biology, that are here on our planet are true throughout the universe. Definitely physics, chemistry as far as we can see. Biology, that's still in question. We'll talk about that plenty this semester. Don't you worry about that. And especially if you take 1404 from me in the next term. We talk plenty about the potential for extraterrestrial biology. It'll come up. But the things you learn in this class are going to be, for the most part, universally applicable. Anywhere. So I want you to be thinking about the things that you learn, not just improving your understanding of our planet, but also you're coming to understand our universe a little bit more. Okay? Here we go. How many of you have heard geology referenced as kind of like a joke before? Is he wrapped around you? You good? There you go. How many of you have heard geology referenced as kind of like a joke? How many of you have ever watched The Big Bang Theory? How does Sheldon Cooper feel about geology? He what? He likes it? No, he does not. What did he say? Penny asked him one time, why don't you like geology? And he said, well, do you remember what you told me about how the Kardashians, how they're not really celebrities, but they kind of fake their way and everyone thinks they are? And he says, yeah. She says, yeah. And he says, geology are the Kardashians of science. And I'm like, oh, right in my heart. Just twist it a little bit more, right? There are tons of jokes about geology and how it's just rocks, right? It's not just rocks, though. Rocks are one aspect, and actually a very fascinating aspect of this science, okay? And you're going to learn all of the stuff, how interesting it is, okay? If rocks are made out of the stuff that makes our planet, then you can think of every of every rock as one more little clue to piecing together the history of our Earth. Like detective work. Figuring out what a rock is made out of and knowing where it came from. One more piece of the puzzle. Okay? So let's start at the bottom. What is geology? Well, the word geology itself is a combination of two words. In Greek, geo, meaning earth, and ology, meaning the study of, or discourse of something. So geology together, I call this Greek word math, by the way. Okay, geo and ology, geology, right? The Greeks did this a lot, combining words to make new words. Okay, it's a discourse about the earth, trying to understand the earth more, not just rocks, the earth. There's so much that goes into that. Okay, there are so many aspects of geology, so many different subfields of geology. There's just a few I've got listed here. Paleoclimatology. This is what my master's thesis was about. What do you guys think paleoclimatology is? What about the climate? What climate? So we've got our climate now, but what do you suppose paleoclimatology is about?
Like the ice age?
The climate of the planet?
Not just the ice age. What do you think paleo means? Yes, the past, exactly. Thank you so much for not saying it's a meat-only diet, right? That's a big thing right now, the paleo diet. Only basic grains and meat and stuff. I'm just like, well, yeah, okay. But paleo actually means ancient, old, okay? Old climates, studying old climates. My master's thesis was the study of microfossils to put together a model for the paleoclimate of 160,000-year-old Oregon. Okay? You can do a lot of stuff. And with paleoclimatology, why do you suppose paleoclimatology is important? Why is it important to understand past climates?
So you can know the difference between the climate now versus from then.
If we don't understand the past, it is so much harder to know where we're going. There are patterns. Believe it or not, Earth works in cycles. It's here and then there, and then a million years later, it's right back here again, in one way or another, tectonically, climatologically, right? It does cycles over and over and over. And so if we understand these cycles, it is so much easier for us to forecast what may be in our future. So paleoclimatology, real important, not just for curiosity, but practicality and safety as well. Great, let's do another one. Let's say volcanology. What is volcanology?
Volcano.
Volcanoes, right? I clearly have no Star Trek nerds in this class. No one went for the easy answer. It's the study of volcans, right? Okay, but yes, it's the study of volcanoes. Volcanology. Why would we want to study volcanoes? What possible use could that have? You having fun? Is this your first time holding a snake? Congratulations! Big, that's huge. Okay. What else? Study of volcanoes. Why? Yeah.
To know why it erupts.
Why they erupt. which is relevant to us how? What if you live around a volcano? Yeah.
Isn't it Pompeii the one that got covered in volcanic ash?
Pompeii is the one, Pompeii is the city that was next to Mount Vesuvius that erupted in 79 AD and killed everyone in Pompeii in that famous eruption. Also killed everyone in the other city of Herculaneum, but for some reason no one talks about that one. Okay? We will talk about Pompeii and Vesuvius next week when we actually talk about volcanoes. Good example. But why? Because there were people living next to it. And there are people that die every year because of volcanic eruptions. You guys know that there's a volcano erupting in Russia right now? 2 weeks ago, there was an 8.8 magnitude earthquake in Russia. The largest earthquake we have seen in a long time. Okay? Definitely within the last decade, I want to say. I don't remember if the one in Fukushima was larger. I feel like that one may have been an 8.6 or an 8.7. I don't remember for sure. But this earthquake was so powerful that it set off a volcano. And that volcano has been erupting in Kamchatka, okay, eastern Russia. And it's been affecting the populations out there. Okay, the ash, all of that. Volcanoes erupt all the time in Iceland, in Japan. Okay, there are volcanoes everywhere. And believe it or not, lots of people live around these things. I've spent a fair amount of time living next to volcanoes, which makes it very relevant to me and other people that live around volcanoes to know when they might erupt. So the study of volcanology is very important. Okay? So every single one of these aspects of geology has some relevance to our society. There's even medical geology, forensic geology. What is that? Using geology to help solve crimes. That's why they're called ball pythons, by the way. They like to wrap up in balls. Okay? Okay. So, there are two aspects to geology that I teach here at Odessa College. Physical geology, which is the course you are currently in. Understanding our planet and what makes it. Okay? Then there's historical geology. 1404 is that section. I teach that in term 2. Okay? In fall 2, if any of you are interested. That's the second half, you can think of it. That's taking everything you learned in physical geology and combining it with the history of life on Earth. Because life and geology on our planet are so intertwined at this point that the evidence of life is even in our rock. Fossils, we call them. The evidence and geology, it's in our bodies. Your bones are made out of minerals. Your teeth are made out of minerals. You ever read, see I've got a protein shake right here. You ever read something like this and it's like, it's got all the minerals you could possibly need, right? They use that word minerals liberally. We'll talk about the definition of mineral here in a minute. But what they're saying is that it has naturally occurring mineral-based nutrients that your body requires to survive. Okay? Life and geology intertwined, inseparable on our planet. Okay? So that's what historical geology is all about. Those two things and how intertwined they are and for how long they have been and understanding that tie-in. Okay? So, Earth is dynamic. Dynamic. This means that it's constantly changing. Give me some examples of the way that our Earth is constantly changing. I'm actually going to drink this now. Hope you don't mind. How is our Earth constantly changing? Yeah.
Tectonic plates.
Tectonic plates. Remind me of your name? Cross. That's right. Cross. Thank you, Cross. What are tectonic plates?
The boundaries of the Earth.
There are boundaries, absolutely, of the Earth, but let's dive into that a little bit more. You had an answer?
The land that I don't remember what I said.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, it's land. It doesn't have to be, but I get what you're saying. Do you have something to add, Javier? No? Anyone else?
The crust of the Earth, moving to the vibrations.
Moving to vibrations. Interesting thought. That's not actually what's happening, but there is movement. Tectonics is the fact that the surface of our planet, the crust, is broken up into a bunch of plates. Tectonic plates, we call them. And what separates those plates are boundaries, each interacting with each other in a different way. Some are overriding other tectonic plates. Some are scraping past them. Some are spreading apart from other tectonic plates. But the surface of our planet is broken up into all of these different plates. Think if I took an egg, a hard-boiled egg, and I rolled it on this table so I only cracked the shell. I didn't remove any of the pieces. And I hold up that egg and you see all the different little cracks? That's what the surface of our planet looks like, except all those little egg pieces are moving around. The little eggshell pieces are moving around on the surface of the egg. Okay? So tectonics, yes, this is an aspect of how dynamic Earth is. Okay? All of these plates are constantly in motion. Some to one extent or another. Some move fast, some move slow. It's about an average of 5 centimeters a year, which for context is how fast your fingernails grow. Okay? If you let your fingernails grow a whole year without clipping them, they'd be out about here, right? That's an average, by the way. Some people are slower and some people are faster. Same thing is true for tectonic plates, though. This is only an average, okay? That may not seem like much, but now think about all of that movement over 1 million years. All of a sudden, we're talking about 5 million centimeters, and that's a heck of a lot more significant, isn't it? That's one thing you're going to learn about in this class, is the time scales we are talking about. Vastly large time scales, almost unimaginably large. I'll help you try and imagine that, though, here in a little bit. Okay, so yes, thank you. Tectonics. What's another way that Earth is dynamic? Things that are constantly changing. Yeah. There's a foil cap on this, apparently. Boy, I looked dumb trying to drink that through a foil cap. Thank you for not laughing. Very charitable of you. You laughed. That's all right. All right. Yes, climate. Absolutely. Is climate geology? No, but we study the climate through geology. The climate itself, the movement of air, has nothing to do with geology. The records of that can be preserved in the geology, though. Climate, however, is absolutely an aspect of how dynamic Earth is. It's all one system. It all works together, and the climate is always changing. Good. Let's get one more before I start pushing through this. One more aspect of how dynamic Earth is. Any thoughts back here? I will occasionally target the parts of the room I don't hear much noise from. How is Earth dynamic? I also haven't heard anything from over here. How is Earth dynamic? How is it constantly changing? Give me one example of how Earth is constantly changing. Earthquakes, fantastic example. Tied to tectonics in a way, right? Same forces, but absolutely an example of how Earth is constantly changing. Something that we occasionally have to deal with here, right? How many of you have felt an earthquake in this area? Good. We have them. In increasing frequency, it would seem. That's what the data seems to suggest. I announced this in the news a few months ago. I went through a whole round of interviews on the news agencies, but I made a partnership with Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, which is based in California. It's a Department of Energy affiliated laboratory. They're doing a study out here to figure out if we can forecast when our earthquakes are going to happen. Okay? And my part of the partnership is I get to educate the public about it. So I'm having a huge seminar here on Odessa College campus on October 24th, and I'm inviting anyone in the community to come and learn about how the oil industry and seismic science, the study of earthquakes, are tied together. That's going to be the first of a whole bunch of different things that we do. Out of curiosity, do I have any geology majors here? There's one. Any others? Cool. How far along are you?
Well, I transferred from psychology to geology,
Cool.
so this is my first geology.
Your first geology class. Fantastic. One thing that came out of this partnership was they said that they would take one full-time intern that I could, of my choice, basically, that would go and do a 3-month internship at this seismology lab in California. If that's something that interests you, let me know, and we can talk about that. Okay? It would be for summer 2026. So this is an opportunity that I'm going to be discussing in particular with my geology majors, but I'll go into that a little bit more later. Okay, so, hello. There we go. Earthquakes, landslides, tectonics, all of these are ways that we can clearly see that the Earth is constantly changing. But what about the things that you don't often see? You all done? Thank you. Anyone else want to turn? Anyone over there? Yeah? Start with cross and then make its way down. There you go, buddy. Okay. The things that we don't often see, the things that are too small to see, things are constantly changing, constantly happening. Think about your body. You are metabolizing whatever you ate for breakfast right now. That's something that happens at the cellular level. Okay? But not just that. Lithification, geologically speaking, okay? There are things. Lithification, the process by which you take loose sediment like sand and you can make sandstone. Taking loose sediment and compressing it and heating it until it becomes a dense, hard rock. That's called lithification. That's not a macro scale thing. That's nothing that you can notice like an earthquake or a landslide. But it is still an aspect of dynamic Earth. Fossilization, right? The process by which a cell is replaced by a single crystal of a mineral. Erosion, the breakdown of material slowly over time. These are still dynamic aspects of Earth, just ones that we don't really think of because they take so long to happen. Okay? So you've got your more global scale events, and then you got your micro scale events. You can think of them. Okay? The formation of the Grand Canyon took a long time, but it's sure noticeable now, right? Fossilization, how every cell in this Archaeopteryx fossil got replaced. And now we have a fossil, okay? In the exact shape of the original organism. All of these are aspects of dynamic Earth. I like to think of geology as the marriage of chemistry and physics, where biology is that brother-in-law that comes to sleep on the couch all the time, okay? You can have geology without biology. For all we know, that's the way that it happens everywhere else. We have no evidence yet, no hard evidence, only circumstantial peripheral evidence, that it's not that case, okay? The statistical likelihood that we're the only place in the universe that has life is extraordinarily small, by the way. This is kind of spoilers for 1404 stuff, but out of all of the planets that we can calculate that exist in the universe, which is about 70 pentillion, that's 70 with, what is that, 15 zeros behind it, okay? It's a lot of zeros, okay? Of all of those planets, the statistical likelihood that we are the only one with life, very small. Even if it's only a 1 in a billion chance, even if it's only a 1 in a trillion chance, that means that there are 70 million planets out there with life. Something to think about, right? Around there, 70 billion, 70 million, depending on whether or not you're going with my billion or trillion number there. That's still a lot of planets with life. Even if it was 1 in a septillion, there are 70 planets out there with life, right? Okay. So having that firm grasp, that understanding of chemistry and physics is pretty important for understanding geology. Biology, also very important. But again, that's more of a historical geology sort of perspective that we'll get into another time. So let's talk about how the science of geology got started. Okay? Way back, before we had a concept of science as a discipline, there were these guys called natural philosophers. Guys like Aristotle. This guy right here. Okay? Sorry, I don't have a picture of him. He died shortly before there were cameras. All right? So he was alive between 385 and 323 BC. And he, like I said, he was called a natural philosopher. What does that mean? Well, natural philosophers would try and understand the world around them using the basic logic that they could use. Okay, so for example, someone came to Aristotle one time with a fish fossil, okay, and said, "What is this? What does this mean? There's fish bones in the rock." Now, if you're Aristotle or any other guy that uses logic without any concept of scientific methodology, you're going to look at a thing and you're going to come up with the most likely explanation for it. So what was his answer? Clearly, there must be some kinds of fish that live in rock. And you found a dead one. It makes sense without any other context. And so that's the sort of answer he would give. Another time someone asked him, what is a volcano? Now remember, Greek, right? Gods, pantheon. What was his answer? Volcanoes. These big mountains, these hills that spout fire. Clearly, this must be a portal to Hades. Their underworld, their hell, if you will. It made sense at the time with the context that he had. But as ridiculous as those answers sound to us right now, they laid the foundation for wanting to ask questions and find answers. So we actually owe natural philosophers quite a lot for that foundation. The next iteration of this is trying to use other sources, other methods to find answers. So we turn to James Ussher. Not him. This one, okay? We turn to this Ussher for answers, okay? What did he do? He was an Anglican priest who came up with this idea, I'm going to use this ancient document that's been around for thousands of years and must have all the answers. What document is that? It's the Bible, okay? He used the Bible to attempt to figure out how old the earth was. Now, what did he find? He found that when you take all of the genealogical references in the Bible, and if you've ever read it, there's a lot. This person begat that person, begat that person, begat that person, right? All throughout that book. What you find, what he found anyway, is that if you add up all those lifetimes together, you come up with this date for creation. October 22nd, 4004 BC. That's about 6,000 years. There are a large number of Christian denominations around the world that still hold the belief that the earth is about 6,000 years old. Slightly older than that at this point, right? But around there. This right here, James Ussher, is where that concept came from. Now this is the 1600s. Right now we can see the effect of his study, if you will call it that, spread all over the world. What was happening in the 1600s that would have caused his math to go everywhere, to be found in Christian denominations in almost every country of the world? What was happening in the 1600s? What was England doing? What was France doing? And Portugal and Spain and Denmark? What were they all doing? Colonizing. And you know what they took with them? Christianity. And you know what that Christianity had? The brand spanking new evidence taken from the Bible of how old the earth was. They loved it. Okay? It caught on like fire, and every Christian denomination or every Christian missionary that went forth in the 1600s and spread that word took that with them, which is why Earth being 6,000 years old is such a deeply held belief in so many Christian denominations around the world today. Okay? That's where it comes from. Now, I do need to put a little bit of a caveat out there, and this is going to come up every now and then in this class and in the following. At no point do the things that I teach you in this class, at no point are they intended to persuade you or dissuade you from any previously held beliefs. Whatever religious tendencies you had before, it's totally fine if you leave in 8 weeks with those same ones. I'm not attempting to change your mind on anything. I'm simply relaying the information scientifically as we understand it today. Bear that in mind, all right? Thank you. Okay, so this caught on real hard and kept going for a long time. No one really questioned it until a while later we get James Hutton. Now, this is James Hutton. I'll get back to him in a moment. There were some things, some questions that people started to ask that started to make people wonder whether or not Earth being 6,000 years old was actually accurate. Okay? After about 100 years, people actually started to question it. Well, if that's true, where do all of these big mountain ranges come from, right? Where are all the volcanic eruptions and all of this? How do deep valleys form? The answer that came up for this was called catastrophism. Catastrophism says that these large-scale geographical features are formed through large-scale, massively catastrophic events. Mountain ranges rise in a few days. Valleys like the Grand Canyon, they form over the course of a few weeks because of giant floods. Volcanoes, they will form in a matter of hours because of these gigantic cataclysmic eruptions. And that worked for a while until people realized, well, none of that stuff is happening. It's been this long and we haven't noticed any of these gigantic catastrophic events. So then out of all of these questions, out of the midst of all these questions came James Hutton. And he decided that he was actually going to take the time to try and figure it out. Instead of just coming up with an answer like that, he spent decades gathering data, observing, recording all of it. And he realized that these things, the raising of a mountain, the erosion of a valley, the eruption of a volcano, they all take time. Different amounts of time, depending on different factors. And so he would record all of this. Say, for example, he would record how much sediment was washed downstream of a river. And then you could go downstream to that river, and based on your observation of this much sediment is washed downstream over a year, you go down there, estimate how much sediment is down there, and that tells you how long that river may have been running in that location. Stuff like that. And he actually came up with, I believe, in the ballpark of about 200 million year old Earth. Now, you tell a group of people who believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old for about 100 years, that you think that the Earth is actually 200 million years old, and what are they going to do? If you're lucky, they will laugh at you. They might throw you in the loony bin, especially if the organization that you're trying to convince is wrong is like the Catholic Church and other Christian denominations. Massive powerhouses, even today, right? And the Catholic Church in particular had a pretty bad track record of the way that they treated scientific individuals that opposed their beliefs. Namely, they would usually kill them. Okay? So, pretty brave to fly in the face of something like that. And yet he did. It was not until he was pretty much dead, he was on his deathbed, when people started to actually accept his findings and be like, oh man, this guy actually put in the legwork. He actually collected the data. Hard to argue with that, right? And some people actually started to believe this. Now we know it's actually significantly a lot more than 200 million years, but I'll get to that in a minute. Thanks to James Hutton and other scientists like him, we came up with what is called the principle of uniformitarianism. That is, physical and chemical and biological laws that operate today also operate in the geologic past. Now, there are only two things in my class that I ask you to get down word for word. If you do not have any notes out, now is the time. I highly recommend you take notes for all of this. But, yes. Oh, sure. Gavin, did you still want to turn? Here you go, buddy. Okay. Yeah.
Do you have like
A marker?
a you always taking notes in
I don't have a marker, but I've got pens. You want blue or black? Black. There you go. Everyone else good? Sweet. Okay, here's the first thing that you should know word for word. And again, I highly recommend you take notes during the entire lecture. But this thing you need to know word for word. Physical, chemical, and biological laws that operate today also operated in the geologic past. Physical, chemical, and biological laws that operate today also operated in the geologic past. What does that mean? I don't think I got to see the name cards here. Remy, right? Juliet, Aaliyah, and Angelina. Okay, great, thank you. What do we think? Physical, chemical, and biological laws that operate today also operate in the geologic past. What does it mean? Anik, what do you think?
that all the things that we know today, they still continue to happen in the past. So everything that we know now also used to happen.
I mean, yes, that's exactly what it means. Let's, you took it down a level. Let's take it down another level in simplicity.
Here you go. I can't one-hand this guy.
Yeah, no worries, I got you. Hey, buddy. Anyone else want to turn before I put him back on my neck? You don't want to turn? Are you snake shy?
Yes.
I guess I'm
Facing your fear? I'm so proud of you. Ah, so many first steps today. Look at y'all go. Yeah, you may. Thank you. All right. I'm looking for that next step down. Physical, chemical, and biological laws. For some reason, my camera lost track of me. Come on, I'm right here. Over here. Hey, buddy. What's going on here? All right, what are we thinking while I fix this?
That changes that happen in the past still happen to this day.
Yes. I wonder why it's not tracking me. I'll have to play with that later. All right, so it's not going to follow me around. That's good to know. All right. Yeah, by studying the processes that exist today, things like the erosion of sediment down a river, for example, we can safely assume that those same things, those same processes occurred in the past. So by studying the things today, we understand our past a lot more. And what's the concept I introduced to you earlier? By studying the past, what do we in turn get more data about?
Dynamic.
Right, it's an aspect of dynamic Earth, which is important because we want to know what?
Why?
What's to come. I'm going to add a section on here. So the principle of uniformitarianism is getting some edits from Professor Hart, right? Physical, chemical, and biological laws that operate today also operated in the geologic past and will operate in the geologic future. Make sense? But wait, there's more. Call now and you'll get another addition to the principle of uniformitarianism. Okay? Physical, chemical, and biological laws that operate today also operated in the geologic past and will operate in the geologic future and are true everywhere else. We have no reason to believe that's not the case. Geological things that happen here are dictated by physics and chemistry. Two things that we're pretty dang sure are common everywhere else. Every other planet in our solar system operates on physics and chemistry. Safe to assume every planet in the universe does as well, until we get evidence to the contrary. Okay? So, again, the things you learn in this class, you gain a universal understanding, not just an Earth-based one. All right? So, something like the Grand Canyon, through processes of weathering and erosion over millions of years, could have come from something like this. Just that little creek in your backyard, if we were lucky enough to be in a place that had creeks in our backyard. Right? I miss having creeks in my backyard. This almost looks exactly like the backyard I had when I was living in Boston as a kid. Right? I miss trees and rivers. But we'll go back to that. Or maybe we won't. All right. Geologic time. Let's talk about this. We separate Earth's history into different sections. Earth has a record about 4.6 billion years old. I'll give you the exact number here in a minute. But about 4.6 billion years, and we separate that into sections of millions of years. Some of these you are already familiar with. The Jurassic, right there. Why do we all know the word Jurassic? Jurassic Park, right? Love Jurassic Park. Huge fan. The movies have gotten dumb, but boy, are they entertaining, right? So the Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, also known as the Mesozoic, commonly known as the time that dinosaurs ruled the Earth. Okay? The Cenozoic followed, commonly known as the Age of Mammals. Okay? We separate all of these things into these different sections. We call these periods. Okay? And then periods are further separated into epochs. Okay? We do this based on biological things that occur. For example, the advent of dinosaur-like reptiles. Okay? Right here. The extinction of dinosaur reptiles. There. Biological things that happen dictate where we draw those lines. So there are a couple of other ways that we designate time through geologic record. The law of superposition, also known as original deposition. Basically, it states that anything on the bottom was there first. Let me demonstrate this for you. Here I have two complex mechanisms. Okay? I'm going to attempt to use these carefully. If I lose a hand, please call emergency services. I'm going to drop these two items. Okay? 1, 2. Which one's on top? The second one. Which one was there first? The first one. Law of superposition. Whatever's on bottom was there first. Okay? It therefore older. So if I'm looking at layers of rocks stacked like this, it's safe to assume the oldest one is where? Down there. And the newest one? Up there. Law of superposition. Very basic, very easy way that we can look at the relative dates, so to speak, the relative coordination of these rocks. Which one's older? Clearly the one on the bottom. Then there's something like the law of superposition. Okay? So like the Permian is older than the Triassic right here. So A is older than B, is older than C, is older than D, is older than E, and so on and so forth. Now, fossil succession adds another element to that. Let's say that layer A had a certain fossil, and layer B had a certain fossil, and layer D had a certain fossil. All of them have unique fossils inside of them. Sure, that helps me coordinate vertically, like we just did with the law of superposition, but this also adds the other dimension of being able to go a certain distance, say 100 miles, and dig down and see if that same layer has that same fossil. If I go 100 miles away, and now all of a sudden, so this is layer A and B, and I find that layer C contains fossil 2, what does that tell me? So we knew that because of law of superposition, right? We knew that fossil 1 is the oldest because of superposition. What this does is, because fossil 2 is only alive during this interval of time, if it's in layer C 100 miles away, layer C was deposited at the same time over there that layer B was deposited over here. That's kind of hurting your brain a little bit, isn't it? Trying to tie things together not only over time, but over distance as well. This is how geology works, though, especially paleontology. Interpreting things like this, knowing which layers were deposited at the same time, even though they're totally different layers of rock, because the same fossils are present in both. That's the principle of fossil succession in a nutshell. Any questions so far? Now, there is another method that we use for the dating of rocks, radiometric dating. This is something I will go into later on. For now, let's just say that we use radioactive elements and the rates at which they decay into other elements to determine how old something is. This is true for rocks. It's true for archaeological remains. We use this method for a lot of stuff. You may have heard it described before as carbon dating, although using carbon for this method is actually a very small subset of the number of elements that we use as a whole. Okay? It's just people usually call it carbon dating because it's shorter than the long name. Okay? Let's talk about science for a second. Step away from geology and talk about science. We use something called the scientific method. Have you all heard this term before? No? Yes, some people have. All right, good. The scientific method is the process by which good, conscientious scientists do their research. It involves collecting data, recording that data, obviously, drawing a hypothesis off of that data, and then testing that hypothesis to see if it is in fact true. However, this is where most people start to flub a little bit. True scientific method application requires you to do it a certain way. If I were to make a hypothesis, my natural instinct is to attempt to prove it right. Correct? How many of you have ever gotten into an argument with the intent of losing it? You have. Sometimes I can see that might be socially a good thing to do. For the most part, we all go into arguments fully expecting us and fully knowing that we are correct and fully expecting ourselves to win that argument, right? Scientific method has to be done a different way. If I have a hypothesis, then the testing of that hypothesis requires me, in good conscience, yes you may, to prove my hypothesis wrong. Why? This is called falsification, by the way. The process by which we attempt to prove ourselves and our hypotheses wrong instead of right. Why am I going to do everything in my power to prove my hypothesis wrong? What's the point of that? If I start this process with the expectation that I am right, and gosh darn it, I'm going to prove that I'm right, what have I done? Remember, no wrong answers. Throw them out there.
You set yourself to find the right answer even if there isn't one.
Bingo! Bingo! You know what that's called? There's one word for it. Huh? Bias. Bias. We all have it. We all think that we're right. Bias is the natural instinct we all have towards ourselves. And it could be just towards ourselves as an individual. It could be towards ourselves as our family, right? Favoring our family above all other people. It could be above ourselves as a race among humanity. That's unfortunate, but it's been known to happen. It could be of ourselves as a species on our planet, favoring humanity above all others. It is bias. And the only way to get around bias is by focusing all efforts on proving your hypothesis incorrect. Now, we call this falsification. If my hypothesis goes through the most rigorous process of falsification, that is me and other people attempting to prove it wrong, and we fail to prove it wrong, what have we found? Possible truth. We don't know for sure that it's right. It's simply a hypothesis that we have failed to prove wrong, meaning it could be truth. If I test my hypothesis and do prove it wrong, what have I found?
That it's possible that it's just wrong.
Well, no, I've been able to prove it wrong. I have proved without a shadow of a doubt that it is wrong, which is itself truth. This hypothesis was incorrect, is still truth. If we go through the proper channels, the proper methods of the scientific method, right? Falsification, no matter what, we are still on our search for truth. But if I go about it with every intent of proving myself right, I am only propagating a potential lie. This is why correct application of the scientific method is important. Those of you that are planning to become scientists or that have a career in the future or a circumstance where you should implement something like the scientific method, please remember this process, or else you could be propagating untruth into society and into science in general, something that we work really hard to avoid and often takes decades to remove from the system. Okay? This is the scientific method. Let's have a case study. I couldn't see it from the front. Anahi? Am I saying it wrong? Anai? All right, Anai. Anai wears glasses. Fact. Observation. Is it okay if I use you as an example? Thank you, I appreciate that. Love the nails, by the way. Very cool. Yeah. Okay, she wears glasses. Why? Let's figure it out. I have made an observation. You all have observed that I made this observation. Now I'm going to make a couple of hypotheses. Actually, you guys can help me. Let's make some hypotheses. First hypothesis is She needs assisted vision. Sure. What's another hypothesis? She likes how they look. She could just be hipster, right? Right? Hey, how did the hipster burn his mouth? He ate the pizza before it was cool. Because that's what hipsters do. They trendsetters, yeah. Yeah, they do, well, no, they do things and set trends. That's. Anyway, sorry, bad joke. I am well known for my bad jokes. You'll get used to it. All right? Okay, so we have several hypotheses here. I like mine, though. I think she's trying to be hipster. I think she's trying to be cool, right? How would we test this? Take them away. And then do what? We're not actually going to do this, though. No, yeah. How could we test my hypothesis? That she does not, in fact, need them for assisted vision purposes.
Give her an eye test where she has to like read the letters.
I mean, yeah, we definitely could do that. I could probably pull that up here. What do you think? Would you fail that test? Okay, well, let's say that she fails that test. All right. All right, what else could we do? Make her walk across an obstacle course, maybe. And after a couple of times of watching our friend Anaï trip and fall down and not be able to read letters, I may in fact have gathered enough data to suggest that yes, my hypothesis was incorrect. Okay? Now what do we do? There's another hypothesis on the table. That they are needed for assisted vision, huh? Yeah, we could give them back. And then show her smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller letters. See how far they can go. And see if it's an improvement on before, right? There's all number of tests we could do. But in the end, what would we find? Anaï, which hypothesis is actually correct? Neither can I, by the way. I have terrible vision, okay? Just so that you don't feel isolated there, okay? -6 and -6.5. Ugh, hate it, okay? I wear contact lenses. Yes, so we have gone through a process, made an observation, made a hypothesis, tested hypothesis, eliminated one, found that one could not be proved incorrect. So now, the hypothesis that has survived the falsification process is called a theory. And this is the difference between a hypothesis and a theory. People often conflate the two words. Please don't do that, okay? A theory is a hypothesis that has failed to be disproven. A hypothesis has not been falsified yet. Yet being the key word in both terms. Theories get disproven all the time. There are theories from the early 1900s that are being disproven now because we have better methods of testing. But for the time being, between now and then, they were called theories because no one could disprove the hypothesis at that time. History books, scientific textbooks, they're constantly being updated as we go through this process of rigorous testing for old theories that were believed, and now we know better because of our scientific capabilities. Okay? Any questions about the scientific method or its application? Thank you for being my case study there. All right, what else? Any other questions? All right. Earth is separated into what we will call spheres. I'm not talking about physical nest egg spheres. We'll talk about Earth's interior spheres in a minute. I'm talking about different aspects of Earth, okay? We've got our hydrosphere. First of all, here's a picture of Earth called the Blue Marble, okay? Taken in the 70s by a space mission, okay? Before we go into the different spheres, actually, let's do something. What do you see in this picture? Tell me what you see. Clouds? Ocean? Huh? It's moving? Yeah, it's clear that things are moving here. Yeah? Atmosphere in the clouds. We see the clouds in the atmosphere. We see the ocean. What else do we see? Continents. What do we see on the continent, perhaps? Well, it's green. It's probably not all grass, right? But yeah, significant amount of that is rainforest, actually. There's some Serengeti grasslands on the top and bottom of that. For the most part, that's pretty dense jungle, okay? We see Every aspect, all the spheres of the Earth in this picture. Let's talk about them now. The hydrosphere is all water on Earth. About 71% of Earth's surface is covered in water. Did you know that? Interestingly enough, that's approximately the same amount of you that is water. Interesting little fun fact there. You're mostly water. So is the surface of the Earth. Then there's the atmosphere, which is actually a lot thicker than people think. It's about 100 kilometers thick. You see this orange band here? That's where it's the densest. That's the troposphere. If you ever fly in an airplane, how many of you have been on airplanes? Wow, most of you have not. That's interesting. Okay. Well, whenever you go in an airplane, you pretty much stay in that troposphere. You don't typically go above that in a standard cruise jet that carry passengers. Okay. The rest of that is still atmosphere. It just gets thinner the further up you go, closer to space. Then you have your geosphere, which is Earth's solid state, solid material from the core, from the crust all the way down to the core. We will talk about each one of those layers in a bit. Then you have the biosphere, which includes all life on Earth, everything that's alive. Now, life on Earth is in all of the previous spheres. There is biosphere in the hydrosphere, atmosphere, and geosphere. And by the way, the hydrosphere, atmosphere, and geosphere are in each of you. The minerals in your bones, geosphere. The air you are currently breathing, atmosphere. And that's dissolved in your blood, atmosphere. Hydrosphere, the water that makes 70% of your body. Okay? All of these spheres are tightly interconnected, inseparable. We call this a system. Okay? So all of these spheres are constantly interacting, making different systems. Weather is an example of different aspects of the atmosphere and hydrosphere interacting with each other. Right? The rock cycle includes all of those. Atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere. We'll talk about the rock cycle later on. Okay? All of these cycles are generated by the interaction of these spheres. Now, all of these things need energy. Every system, every cycle, every process requires energy of one kind or another. There are two sources of energy on our planet. There is the external energy and the internal energy. External energy is provided by the sun. That powers all of the things that occur on our surface. Things like hurricanes, like what you see here. You see all that purple and red and yellow? This is an energy map. This is registering how much energy is inside of the storm. Where does that come from? The sun. The sun has provided the energy for this process. Okay? Everything that happens in the ocean or in the atmosphere, all of that is driven by sun energy. The other source of energy is from inside of our planet. So what drives things that occur inside of our planet, like this volcanic eruption here? Where does that energy come from? Well, deeper inside the planet. There's a lot of heat inside of our planet. Okay? All of that heat is generated in large part by radiation. There is a vast quantity of radioactive particles at the center of our planet. That's where most of the radioactive particles, which tend to be denser, settled as our planet was cooling down. I'll talk more about the cooling of the planet and the stratification of Earth's interior layers here in a little bit. Okay. The rock cycle is obviously the cycle that's most relevant to our conversation. There is a difference between a rock and a mineral. I kind of talked about that before. Let me give you a little bit more details here. Rocks are made out of minerals. Minerals are not rocks. Okay? I'll give you some examples of that to make it a little bit easier to understand when we get to the section, the lecture that's actually about minerals. But just remember that that's the difference. Rocks are made out of minerals, and minerals are not rocks. It would be like if I said, let's see, okay. It would be like if I handed Jackson a single chocolate chip and said, here, have a chocolate chip cookie. Is that a cookie? No, Mr. Hart's being weird again, right? No, it's not a cookie. It's one chocolate chip, but it's a piece of a chocolate chip cookie. It's a component of a chocolate chip cookie. What am I missing? Flour, butter, baking soda, salt, sugar, brown sugar, all the things that you need to make a delicious chocolate chip cookie. I only have one ingredient. It's the same thing if I hand someone a mineral and say, here, take that rock. It ain't a rock. It's a mineral. Minerals are made out of that stuff. Okay? We'll go more in depth into that later on. But there are three main groups, well, three groups at all, of rocks. Okay? Igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. They all form in different environments through different factors. And we have weeks set aside for learning about these things. Next week, we're going to be talking all about igneous rocks. The next week after that, all about sedimentary rocks. The week after that, all about metamorphic rocks. You're going to get your fill of these rocks, and they're going to be cool. Okay? I have tons of rocks to show you. It's going to be really interesting. Okay, but this is our rock cycle. The process of making all these different kinds of rocks and the different energies and processes that they go through. Okay? My favorite place to start off is magma. What is magma? Underground lava. I like how you said that. Magma and lava are the same thing. It's just that magma is what we call it when it's underground. Lava is what we call it when it's above ground. But regardless, both of them are melted rock. In the same way that that same chocolate chip that I had in my hand, if I left it there, it would eventually melt because of the heat of my body. Minerals have melting points too. And so eventually, when it's underground deep enough or long enough, they do melt. And you get magma. So we have magma. You could really start anywhere on this cycle, but I like starting here. It seems like a good baseline. So we have our liquid rock, our magma underground. It goes through cooling and crystallization. It loses that temperature and cools back into rock, igneous rock. This can happen underground or above ground, depending on the situation. So we have our igneous rock now. What's the next process? Weathering and breakdown. It gets exposed at the surface. It's not used to those situations, to that environment. The rain and the wind and the animals and anything else that has any impact upon that rock breaks it down into smaller pieces that we call sediment. Okay, so we get weathering and erosion and sediment. That sediment gets transported, usually by water or wind, and deposited layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And it gets compressed and heated and becomes, through lithification, sedimentary rock. That sedimentary rock, in turn, gets buried deeper and deeper and deeper as more stuff gets buried on top of it and top of it and top of it piled on top. And so eventually, once it gets buried deep enough and hot enough, it goes through metamorphism and becomes our third type, metamorphic rock. Then what happens if you think we heat up that metamorphic rock a little bit more? Bingo. It melts, and we get magma again. This is our rock cycle. Now, in general, this is our rock cycle. There are some exceptions. We can skip a few steps, but then again, there are other steps we can't skip. For example, I'll put all my pens over here. Let's use purple. Is this going to work? It's going to work. Okay. We can go from igneous rock that is already cooled off straight back to magma. You can remelt that. There's no rule that says you can't. And it happens all the time. Magma to igneous rock, and then straight back to magma. Sure. You can have metamorphic rock that instead of getting buried deeper and melting, gets pushed back up to the surface and weathers back into sediment. Happens all the time. You can have sedimentary rock that instead of getting buried at all and becoming metamorphic rock, stays at the surface and weathers back into sediment. Happens all the time. Igneous rock can stay underground and get metamorphosed without ever going to the surface and weathering away into sediment. Happens all the time. But what can't we do? Huh? Okay, in what circumstance can we not skip magma? Metamorphic rock will never become igneous rock without first having become magma first. That's the whole point of igneous rock. Igneous rock, the definition of igneous rock is that it was formed from magma or lava. So we can't skip that step. What else? Sediment will never go straight into magma. Even if it's just for the briefest moment, it will go through a metamorphic phase as it heats up. Okay? Igneous rock will never become sedimentary rock without first having broken down. Why? Because the whole definition of sedimentary rock is that it's made from the broken fragments of other rocks. It has to go through the weathering and erosion to become sediment before you can make sedimentary rock out of it. So there are certain steps that you can't skip, and really it makes sense that you can't skip them when you think about it. Okay, this is our rock cycle. We're going to be working on different aspects of this rock cycle for the whole rest of the semester. Any questions about that? Good. Because now it's time to get deep. We're going to talk about the beginning, how it all started. Let's talk about the Big Bang. 13.7 billion years ago, we think there was really nothing. And then all of a sudden, there was this massive explosion of hydrogen. We really have no idea what was there before. Okay? But there was this massive explosion of hydrogen from some point in space, presumably the center of our universe, since that's where everything's expanding from. And all of this hydrogen blew outward in an ever-expanding cloud of particles. Now, even though hydrogen is the smallest unit, the smallest particle on our periodic table of elements, it still contains some mass, right? Here's the nature of mass. It exerts a force. Do you know that? Do you know that mass exerts a force? What's that force called? It's gravity. That pen fell, gravity still works. Also, I'm standing here on the ground. More evidence that gravity works. Gravity is a force exerting by the presence of mass. Even one hydrogen atom has a certain amount of gravity. And so, as this massive cloud of hydrogen was blasting through the universe, they started to pull towards each other by the slight influence of all this gravity. And as you get more hydrogen pulling together, making a larger and larger cloud of hydrogen, it gets denser and denser and denser until finally it enters a state of supercriticality, where there is so much energy inside of this cloud of hydrogen that it is breaking those hydrogens apart, ripping them to pieces, and then through the use of the energy generated, making a brand new particle. What do we call this? Do you know? What do we call the process of ripping an atom apart? What's the other one? Okay, you said fusion, right? Okay, that's good. It's fission. Yeah, fission is the ripping apart. Fusion is the stitching back together and making a new element. Good, thank you. Okay, fission, you rip apart the hydrogens. Fusion, they come back together, but they made something new. Do you know what they made? Do you know what the next generation of atoms in our universe was? You rip apart hydrogens, you stitch them back together, you get helium. You rip apart those heliums next. The next generation of elements that got ripped apart. By the way, this is a star that happened. That supercritical cloud made the first stars. The fuel for those stars, hydrogens. Ripping it apart, putting back together, and making something new, helium. After enough hydrogen was used up, the next thing that got used was the helium. You rip apart those heliums and any remaining hydrogens, you stitch them back together through fusion. What do you get? You see in the pattern? Lithium. Then the next one, beryllium. Then the next one, boron, carbon, nitrogen. This is how all our elements were made. This is called the R cycle. In the heart of stars, constantly using nuclear forces of fission and fusion, basic elements got ripped apart and larger elements got put back together. And every time a star ran out of fuel and exploded in a nova, it spread those heavier elements, the new elements, through the universe. Star, star, boom, 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 boom. Imagine the fireworks when that first generation of stars all blew up. How cool. Everything spreading through the universe. What does this mean? This means that the elements that make everything around you came from a star. Every element that makes your body was made in a star billions of years ago. Isn't that neat to think of? You could be made out of stars from every corner of our universe, making its way through space for billions of years before it ended up here to be incorporated in your body. It's pretty cool. Yeah, you may. Okay, so that is the process by which all of these elements were made. So now let's jump to about 5 billion years ago. A cloud of gases and elements in this part of our universe coalesced together and formed a star. That star is our star. Do you know the name of our star? Sol. S-O-L. Which is why we call our region of space the solar system. There is only one solar system. There are no other solar systems in the universe. There are so many star systems that have different names. Our name is the solar system because our star is designated as Sol. Okay? So, in our region of space, the star was made. Sol was created. And around it, caught in its orbit, was a whole bunch of debris that did not get incorporated into the star. That debris, the denser stuff, got pulled closer to the star because of gravity, and the lighter elements were left out towards the outer edge. And as time goes on, all of these clouds of debris coalesce into rings. And eventually those rings coalesce into planets. Close to our star, we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, the rocky planets, the ones made out of the denser material. Further away from our star, we get Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, made out of the lighter elements, becoming gas giants. And then there are also various other asteroid belts. We have 2 asteroid belts, one between Mars and the outer planets, and then one on the outer edge of our solar system. Okay? So we've got a whole bunch of leftover material from this process that we can study, which is pretty cool. Yeah?
I know they don't classify Pluto as a planet anymore, but what about Pluto?
What about Pluto? Yes, it's been back and forth on Pluto. Is Pluto a planet? Is it not? Right now we're in an it is not phase. And the reason why mostly has to do with the nature of its gravity. Okay? Pluto is weird for a couple of reasons. Its moon is about 30% the mass of Pluto itself. It's pretty big. Okay? Pluto is a spherical object, a planetoid. Okay? But its moon is an asteroid that got caught in its gravity. It just wandered too close. It's about a third the size of Pluto, however, which means that it doesn't orbit Pluto as much as they orbit each other. The moon orbits or has enough of a gravitational influence that Pluto itself is also kind of orbiting its moon. So here's a little bit of a mind-bending thing for you. Here's Pluto. Here's its moon asteroid. Because they are exerting gravity on each other, the center of gravity for Pluto isn't in the center of Pluto. Gravity for Pluto is about there, between itself and its moon. If you were to go to Pluto and stand on Pluto's surface, you would immediately be ripped off of Pluto's surface as gravity forced you to space right there between its moon and itself. And this is a main reason why we are not considering it a planet anymore, is because it does not contain its own center of gravity, for one. There are a few other factors, but that's a big one. Okay? Isn't that interesting? It's pretty cool. I'm going to say that a lot. I think this is a lot cool. Yes, so, by the way, where did Pluto come from? That's a whole nother thing. There are lots of crazy, fun theories out there. There's a theory, because it's weird that there's a rocky planetoid out there on the outer edge of the solar system. away from the other rocky planets. By the way, it's not the only one. There's a brand new planet out there, even further away than Pluto. I don't know if you guys heard about that. Just in the last year, they've proven that it exists. There's another smaller planetoid, even further out than Pluto is, but still technically a part of our solar system. Okay? They called it ammonite, which is interesting because these are ammonites. These fossils are ammonites. But we'll learn more about that in the years to come, I'm sure. But why is it there? Why are these rocky bodies out there past the gas giants when all of the other rocky bodies are here closer to the sun? One theory is that these are not native to our solar system. What happens when a sun dies? It no longer is exerting gravity, which means that anything that was previously circling it kind of drifts off. One theory is that Pluto and other small planets like that are on the outer edge of our solar system have been drifting through space for however long it's been since their star died, and they ended up getting stuck in our solar system's orbit. A very interesting theory. We would have to go to Pluto and take samples to figure that out, figure out if it's made out of the ratio of elements that we know the rest of our planets and our star system are, or if it's made from a ratio of elements that would designate it as being from a different place. Very interesting thought. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. This is called the nebular theory, by the way, going from gas cloud to kind of disk to this these rings around the star, and those rings coalescing into the planets that we have now. So exactly how old is our Earth? 4.543 billion years is the age that we have. Where does that come from? The oldest rock we have on Earth is 4.4 billion years old. So, but we're saying that the Earth is 4.543 billion years old. Where are we getting that date from? Any ideas? No. No. Good thought, but no. It's not how long it took the rocks to form. The oldest rock we have from Earth is 4.4 billion years. How can I possibly say that the Earth is 4.543 billion years old then? Where else could we have gotten samples from? I think I heard it. Not the ocean. Someone else say something? Thought I heard someone say it. You look at it every night. It's the moon. The oldest rock we have brought back from the moon is 4.543 billion years. And guess what? Our moon was part of our planet at one point. Our moon was formed when another planet called Theia collided with early Earth. 4.543 billion years ago, it looks like. However old the moon is, that's at least how long Earth has been around, because the moon was made out of the debris from that collision. Earth itself is actually two planets, early Earth and Theia, whose masses combined to make the Earth that we live on today. Okay, so let's talk about how big that number is. 4.543. Here's some numbers you probably think about. Change, right? You probably don't carry any around in your pockets anymore, but you go to the store and a candy bar is $1.99, right? Just so that they can say it's not $2. Just so that they don't have to pay taxes on that extra dollar delineation. They make it $1.99, right? 99 cents. That's what we think about, right? Lifetimes, tens, hopefully hundreds if we're lucky. Hopefully by the time, we're all getting up there in years. I'm still not that far up there in years, by the way. Hopefully we're looking at least 100 years of life if science has moved on far enough, right? Salaries, tens of thousands. Fingers crossed for more than that, right? Good luck, guys. It's hard out there. Hope you get there, okay? The U.S. budget. Now, the budget does tend to be in billions of dollars. As a matter of fact, if they say the U.S. budget increased by $60 billion, no one even bats an eye anymore. They just print money, and I'm not going to get political, but it's kind of depressing, okay? We don't even think about those numbers anymore in terms of this. Let's talk about exactly how big 1 billion is, though, okay? Here I have a sheet of paper. For those of you watching online, you can see it here on the screen. This sheet of paper. Tell me how many dots are on this sheet of paper. I hear 100,000. Did you also say 100,000? You said 1,000? Okay, so we have 1,000 or 100,000? 10,000? 50,000. Huh? 1 billion? Whew, that's a lot of dots. Any other guesses? I'm moving it too far for you, too fast for you guys to count. Right? Okay, there's actually 4,000 dots on this sheet of paper. So how many sheets of paper just like this would we need to reach 1 million dots? Oh, he's making me do math. Sorry. I promise this is as bad as the math gets in my class. 1.5 sheets of paper?
4 plus 4 is 8, and you add another 4, that's 12.
Well, it's 4,000 though. I'm hearing 200,000. Yes, we need 250 sheets of paper just like this to make 1 million dots. But we're not talking about 1 million dots, are we? No. Now, a ream of paper like this has 500 sheets in it and is about 3 inches tall. So half a ream of paper to make 1 million dots. We don't need 1 million dots. We need 1 billion dots. How many sheets of paper to make a billion? Hold on, I have to say it right. 1 billion. I don't know if any of you get that reference. I would say watch an Austin Powers movie, but I don't know if it's worth your time. Okay. How many to get 1 billion? Well, how many? 250,000 sheets, which means 500 reams of paper, each of which is between 2 and 3 inches. This one's a little more than 2 inches, about 2.5, but we'll just call it 2 inches for this example. Okay, 250,000 sheets equals 500 of these, which means to reach 1 billion dots is a tower of paper 83 feet tall, each of which looks like that. However, we're not talking about 1 billion either, are we? What are we talking about here? Let's go to 4.5 billion. To reach 4.5 billion dots would mean 2,250 reams, creating a tower of paper 380 feet tall. So a 38-story building of paper filled with sheets of paper that look like this, with each dot representing 1 year of Earth history. That's how old Earth is. It's a lot of paper. It's a lot of dots. It's a lot of years. Let me give you another example. Who needs to go for a walk? You guys need to stretch? Because we're going to walk around the equator. Who's ready? You got your Fitbits? Yeah? We're going to go for a walk around the equator. Okay? How many steps would it take? Well, the average step is going to be about 2 feet. Okay? That means that it would take about 1 billion steps to go 15 times around the equator. Okay? But again, we're not talking about 1 billion. We're talking about 4.5 billion, which is going to be 70 times around the equator of our planet, with each step representing 1 year. You ready? What if I offered you more extra credit? Yeah? You ready now? Yeah? All right. So I hope that puts it into more perspective for you. Exactly how old our Earth is in a way that's more tangible, in a way that's easier for you to comprehend than just a number. Okay? So now let's talk about the ways that we separate geologic time. I need you all to pull out a piece of paper and a pen. I'm just refreshing my memory on everyone's names. Angelica? What is it? Angelina. Okay, I was close. Angelina. Got it. Okay. Cross. All right. Everyone have your paper and pens? You're going to make a box just like this one, separated into 3 sections. This is an exercise to help you figure out Geologic time and the way that we separate it. Yes? It can take up however much space you want, but you do need to write in these boxes, so just bear that in mind. After you have made these boxes, you are going to fill the far left box with this text, and only this text. You are not putting in any dates or anything yet. You are literally writing, started college, started high school, started grade school, learned to ride a bike, learned to walk, and born. In that order, top to bottom, like so. Yeah. You done? Sure. All right. Ready to chill out, dude? You've been around the block. Okay. How we doing? I think my secondary microphone over here died. All right, in that middle column, that's where you're going to write the dates for these events. I put my dates up there just for an example. I'll save you all the math. I am 31. While you're writing that down, I want to point something out here. Where have I put the oldest date? At the bottom. And the most recent one? What do we call this? There was a law. Superposition. Good. Oldest on bottom, youngest on top. Superposition. Okay. I'm hoping that you're well along through those dates. Most of y'all are in high school. You don't have that much math to do for figuring these dates out, right? Okay. Now you're going to draw a horizontal line between started grade school and learn to ride a bike. Because I'm assuming, well, at least it was in my life, and it really doesn't matter if it was or not for this example, I learned how to ride a bike before I started grade school. I don't know if it's true for everyone. Yeah?
Are we supposed to put our own dates?
Yes. Your own dates. No. Were you born in 93? I was like, why are you in high school still? Why have you been in college for 15 years? Why have I? All right, now that horizontal line right there, splitting these sequences into two. Why are we doing that? Well, let's find out. We are going in that third column to name everything above that line Schoolean. And everything below that line pre-Schoolean. And just like that, we have separated your life into two different eras the same way that we do with geologic time. Okay? So we have sequential life events, numerical time, and time intervals that we give names to different sections of. This is exactly the same thing we do for geologic time. Remember how I showed you the Triassic and the Jurassic and the Cretaceous and all of that? These right here, Each one of these, the Ordovician, the Silurian, the Tertiary, the Quaternary, each one of them is separated from the others based on events that occurred to life through time. For example, the Devonian, first amphibians, pretty important, right? Pennsylvanian, first reptiles, pretty important, right? All of these events, these biological events, fill the same role as learning to ride a bike or starting college does in your life, okay? Those are your sequential time events. The years that you put, that's the numerical time, right? And then where we did time intervals like the Schoolian and the pre-Schoolian, that's how we separate them out into things like the eons, eras, periods, and epochs on the geologic time scale. Same concept, same practice, different scales. All right? Good. Any questions about that? Great. Let's keep on trucking. Okay, so Earth has a whole bunch of layers through it. Why? Well, when early Earth was cooling down, because it did start off as a whole bunch of molten rock, okay, that asteroid belt that was here before us in our orbital path, all those asteroids collided with each other as time went on and made a larger mass, a planetary mass, called Earth. And because of all those collisions, it stayed hot and melted, molten ball of rock in space for a long time until it started to cool off. And where did it cool off first? The outer edge, the part that was in space, that was touching space. Okay, it cooled off there. It made a crust. That crust started to get thicker and thicker. It got to the point where magma from deep inside the cooling Earth could only come up by getting through the crust. And whenever it did, it made volcanoes. Those volcanoes don't only spit out lava, they spit out gases. They spit out water. We start forming an early atmosphere, an early ocean on Earth's surface. Okay? So that's what early Earth looks like. It's still cooling off. It's cooling off from the outside in. Excuse me. Eventually, Earth is going to cool off all the way. We already have a planet in our solar system that suffered this fate. Any guesses? Gas giants. Those are gas giants. No, also a gas giant. Mars. Venus is actually the hottest planet in our solar system. It's even hotter than Mercury, which is closer to the sun than it is. Venus has an atmosphere, like Earth does. It's just that most of its atmosphere is carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas that traps heat. So while Venus has an atmosphere and is further from the sun than Mercury, it is hotter than Mercury because the atmosphere collects all the solar heat and then traps it. So the surface of Venus is actually extremely, extremely hot, even though it has an atmosphere. But Mars is what I'm talking about. Mars is, for all intents and purposes, apparently a dead planet. But we can see that it didn't used to be. Mars had water. Mars had atmosphere. Mars had ice. Mars had rivers. Mars may have had life, guys. It had everything that it needed for life like Earth did. Except for a few factors, which I'll talk about later. But what happened to Mars? It cooled off. Mars is only about a little over half the size of Earth. Okay? Actually, I think it's a little under half the size of Earth. I think that's the statistic there. Which means that its core cooled off faster than Earth's did. It lost that heat. It no longer was generating things like volcanism. It no longer was making a magnetic field, which I'll talk about here in a minute. Which means that solar radiation, cosmic radiation, was able to essentially blow away its atmosphere into space. As atmosphere was lost, the water was lost. It all evaporated away, leaving Mars the cold, barren desert landscape it is now. If you were looking at Mars 2.5 billion years ago, it would have had blue and white all over it. Atmosphere, clouds, oceans. Interesting. That's the fate that awaits our planet as well in a couple more billion years. Yeah. A couple billion. Yeah. Our sun has about 5 billion years left before it dies. but our planet probably only has 2 to 2.5 billion more before our core cools off the rest of the way, on the timeline based off of looking at planets like Mars. Hopefully we are well away from here before then. If we're still stuck to our planet in 2 billion years, we deserve to go out, as far as I'm concerned. Like, come on, guys, right? Okay, so we already kind of talked about this, okay? The oldest crustal material we have of 4.4 billion years, but we know that it's older, that Earth is older because of rocks from the moon, right? So we separate the Earth into different layers. The core, which is made out of mostly iron and nickel. The mantle, the lower mantle, magnesium and iron. The upper mantle, magnesium and iron. We'll talk about the difference between those two. And the crust. Hey, that's where we live. Most of the crust is made out of silicon, aluminum, calcium, sodium, potassium, oxygen, iron, and magnesium. Those 8 elements make the vast majority, about 92%, I want to say is the statistic, of the mass of the Earth's crust. Okay? So let's talk about that crust here for a second. All of those elements, well, most of those elements, the oxygen, silicon, potassium, calcium, everything except iron and magnesium, are actually pretty light. They don't have as much mass as the iron and magnesium, which is why iron and magnesium tends to get pulled deeper, closer to the Earth's core. The lighter elements, so to speak, stay closer to the surface, which is why most of our rocks here are made out of those. Okay? So this is the composition by ratio of all of those right here, as you can see. We separate our crust into 2 sections, okay, into 2 categories. Oceanic crust and continental crust, both of which you can understand where they are. Oceanic crust is in the ocean. Continental crust is the land. Okay? So oceanic crust tends to be thinner, but made out of denser material, for reasons you'll understand later on. Continental crust tends to be thicker and made out of lighter material, which is why it's above the surface of the ocean. It's more buoyant on top of the mantle underneath of the crust. Then we've got the mantle. The mantle makes up the vast majority of the volume of our planet, 82% of it. And we separate into 2 sections. There's the upper mantle. Oh, by the way, quick note. The metric system, kilometers, meters, grams, stuff like that, that's scientific communication, that's scientific standard. I'll mostly be working in those denominations, okay, in those measurements. I'll give you things like mile conversions when I remember. I may not always remember. The United States is one of the only places in the world that uses the imperial system of feet and miles and such, inches. Most other people don't use that. So most scientists communicate using the metric system for universality reasons. Okay. The upper mantle is rigid. Okay, hot, real hot, hot enough even to be melted, but the amount of pressure it's under keeps it from being melted. So it's rigid. It's rock. It can move, but it's more solid than anything else. Okay. Then you've got the lower mantle, which is really, the best way I can describe it is squishy. Okay? Still technically a solid, though, in the same way that Plato is a solid. Would we all agree that Plato is technically a solid? Yes, but if you exert force on it, it changes its shape based upon the pressures inflicted on it. Same thing with the lower mantle. It is squishy, but still solid. Okay? Then there's the core. The core is an iron-nickel alloy. Yeah? Oobleck? Oobleck is a material that gets more solid the more energy you put into it. So not the mantle. In general, with most materials, the more energy you put into something, the closer it gets to a liquid. With Oobleck materials, the more energy you put into it, the closer it gets to a solid. That's a totally different thing. Doesn't really occur geologically that I've ever heard of. Fascinating thing, especially if you study Newtonians, materials and things like that. But yeah, not really something that applies to the core or the mantle. Good question, though. Okay. Yes, iron and nickel alloy with a whole bunch of other stuff in it. You remember how I mentioned that a lot of our denser radioactive elements are closer to the core? This is where they're all at. This is where they're hanging out. So while I call it an iron-nickel alloy, it's also rich in uranium and thorium and a whole bunch of other super dense radioactive materials, okay, generating a lot of that heat. Now, if you've ever seen this movie, it's a terrible movie, which means that it's really worth watching. I love really bad science movies. Oh, that reminds me. At some point this semester, we are going to have a bad geology movie night. Worth a little bit more extra credit. I heard a yes, enthusiasm. Great. So we'll meet in this classroom, and it'll be on a Friday evening. We'll meet in this classroom. We'll democratically decide which movie we want to watch. I have a list of them that you can select from. I'll send a Google form to all of you later in the semester. This is usually around week 6 or 7 we do this, before finals. And then we'll just gather up. We'll have snacks and drinks, whatever you want to bring, and we'll watch a bad geology movie. And I'll have a few extra credit questions that you can fill out for it, and it'll just be a good time. Okay, so we'll talk more about that later on in the semester. But the core is one of the ones we can watch. Terrible movie, well worth a watch. Okay, so we have our outer core, which is the only actual liquid layer of our planet. There's a lot of misinformation about geology out there. One of the most common misconceptions that I find people still believe for some reason is that underneath the crust, Earth is liquid. That our tectonic plates are just bumper boats floating around on an ocean of magma. Not true. It is solid all the way down to the outer core. Okay? This is the only actual liquid layer we've got. So we have our outer core. Let me show you this here. That is liquid iron-nickel alloy with a bunch of those other radioactive elements mixed in. Okay? Then we have our solid inner core, made out of approximately the same material, but it's solid. Why? Because once again, we have entered a state of compression so intense that even though it is more than hot enough to be melted, it is too pressurized to be in a melted state and therefore remains as a solid. Okay? So liquid outer core, solid inner core. Now, why is this interesting? Well, one of the biggest reasons why is because we owe our entire existence to this fact. This is where Mars died. This is why Mars died. We have an outer core that is liquid iron, surrounding an inner core that is solid iron, and our inner core, apparently, is rotating. Not in the same direction or speed as the rest of our planet. Which means that the interactions of all of this iron is generating a magnetic field. You know how iron is magnetic? You can stick an iron or a magnet to pretty much any piece of iron. Liquid iron has the same properties. You put electricity through a body of iron, and it's going to generate a field. Well, this movement is generating so much energy, so much electricity, it's making a massive electromagnetic field that surrounds our planet. Think of it as a force field. And it's protecting us from 99.9% of all that cosmic and solar radiation. The little bit that makes it through is what gives you that sunburn. That's very, very mild radiation poisoning. Without our magnetic field, the same thing happens to us that happened to Mars right now. Atmosphere gets blown away, water evaporates into space because it's not protected. So, this interaction is what's making that magnetic field. The magnetic field is what allows life to be livable, or what allows Earth to be livable. Okay? Okay. Earth's continents are made out of predominantly, I should say, those lighter elements, which means that its density, the continental crust, is less dense than the thinner ocean crust under all the water. Okay? Our continental crust is about 2.7 grams per centimeter cubed of density, and our ocean crust is about 3.0 grams per centimeter cubed density. Not a lot of difference, but pretty significant when we're talking about quadrillions of tons of rock in any given area. Okay? Even more than that, depending on the size of the tectonic plate. To think of density, density is a measure of mass per unit volume, okay? Which use these cargo ships to kind of imagine this concept. These are the same cargo ship. One is filled with cargo and one is not. Both of them occupy the same volume of space. But guess what? When you have more stuff in that volume, this ship rides lower in the water than that one. The water is halfway up the keel on this one and all the way up to the bottom, or up to the top of the keel on this one, okay? Because there is more mass occupying the same amount of volume for this one on the left. This is density. This one is more dense than that. The ocean crust, though it is thinner than the continental crust, is made out of more dense material. Therefore, sits lower on the surface, which is why it's covered in water. While the continental crust, while thicker and made of less dense material, is above the surface of the water. Okay? Take a look at this map. Let's talk about this for a second. This is showing you all of the major mountain belts on our planet. Everywhere you see that is yellow is a currently being built or recently built mountain range within the last 100 million years. There are two major mountain belts that we can see here. We've got our Circum-Pacific mountain belt right here. Okay, comes around this way. And our Eurasian mountain belt right there. These are the two most active recent or being built mountain ranges. Okay. Everywhere you see that is purple is an old mountain belt. Everywhere you see that is pink is what's called a shield. That is an ancient mountain belt that has been covered in sediment. Or excuse me, it's an ancient mountain belt that has weathered down but is still at the surface. Everywhere you see that is gray is an ancient mountain belt that is covered in sediment. But still technically, you know, the root of an old mountain range. So let me ask you this. Based on this map, is there anywhere on any continent, anywhere on the surface of our planet, that is not made by a mountain? Do you see anywhere that is not either yellow or purple or pink or gray? No. So what can we safely assume then? I'm not sure what that means. Hold on a second. Yeah, verbalize that.
Each of these mountains, like this is the bottom of the ocean, this is the top of the land, and they're.
I mean, they are, but that's not really what I'm looking for. Over here, someone had an answer. Bingo! Our continents are made by mountain building. Continents don't exist without mountains being formed. And as more mountains are formed, more continent is added. This is a concept that we'll go over a lot, especially in 1404 as we discuss ancient mountain building events. Okay? Already discussed that. Okay, the oceans now. We separate the oceans into a few different areas, okay? We've got your continental margins, which are the places right next to the continents, okay? So this is your continental margin area, okay? We separate that into the shelf, continental shelf, which is simply continental crust covered in water. Then we have the continental slope, which is where you start going into deeper water, transitioning from continent to ocean. Then your continental rise, which is where you start to have that buildup of sediment on the ocean bottom, on the ocean crust. And then you've got your deep abyssal plain, which is literally the bottom of the ocean. Okay. And then there are trenches out there, which are deep intersection zones between tectonic plates. The deepest places in the world are trenches. Okay. The Mariana Trench is about 11,000 meters deep. Very, 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 very deep. That's, you know, smash you to the size of a soda can deep pressure, right? And then you've got seamounts. Seamounts are underwater volcanoes. There's anywhere between 1 and 2 million of them at the bottom of the ocean. Remember, most of our planet is covered in water. It's covered in ocean. So however many volcanoes we have on the continents, there's a lot more underwater. There's about 1 to 2 million of them. It's hard to keep track, and it's hard to monitor them all to see when they're going to erupt, which is why every now and then one of them catches off guard, which is what happened to Tonga a few years back. A seamount a few miles off of their island erupted, covered their island in ash. No one knew it was going to happen. shut down tourism for a while, really hurt their economy. Okay. All right, mid-ocean ridges are transition zones between tectonic plates out in the ocean. So this is the mid-Atlantic ridge, and you can see what it's doing right here. A ridge is where two plates are splitting apart from each other, separating from each other, making new mass, new ocean crust mass between them as they separate further apart from each other, okay? So they're moving off in these directions, and you can see on this map where the mid-Atlantic ridge is. And you'll notice it slices right through this country right here called Iceland. The mid-Atlantic ridge slices right through Iceland. Cuts it in half, actually. So I went to Iceland in 2017, and I was able to go dive inside of this ridge area between these two tectonic plates. So for a very brief little bit of time, I was on no tectonic plate at all, which is pretty cool. I was diving between them. And then there's another place further along, if you go up the valley, where the two plates come so close together, you can actually touch both at the same time. So I was able to do that too. I highly recommend going to Iceland. It's like my favorite place on earth. I would be there all the time. I tried so hard to get a job over there, actually. Because I used to work at a gold mine. I was an exploration geologist for a gold mine. I did some research, quite a bit of it, and I contacted the Icelandic government and I said, hey, I am like 98% confident that you have a lot of gold on your island because you have a lot of the same geological conditions that the mine I used to work at had, and you have a lot of the same history. And they're like, yeah, we've heard this before. We're sure you're right, but it would cost about $5 billion to start a gold mine before you even start to see any profits, and we don't have that kind of money. The country literally can't afford to start a gold mine. So hopefully that changes in the future, and if they do, man, I'll see if I can get in there. But I love Iceland so much. It's like a geologist's playground. Okay, so this is the theory of plate tectonics in a nutshell. Earth is broken up into a whole bunch of plates. Here you have a diagram showing the main ones. There are 7 main ones: North American, Eurasian, African, South American, Pacific, Antarctic, okay, and Australian, okay? And then you've got a whole bunch of little ones sandwiched between all of those, okay? I already mentioned that they move at about 5 centimeters a year on average. And how do they move? Why do they move in the first place? Convection. What does our planet have that egg, that hard-boiled egg, doesn't have? Why don't the little sections of shell on that hard-boiled egg move? Because there's nothing happening inside the egg. What's happening inside our Earth? Who can tell me what convection is? Convection. Movement of what? Fluid. Sure. Only fluid? Does it have to only be fluid? Convection, in general, is the rise of hot material and the fall of cold material. We're all familiar with the concept of heat rising, right? If you live on the 2nd or 3rd story of an apartment building in the winter, you're sitting pretty because the people on the 1st floor are paying part of your electric bill, right? Because their heat is rising up into your apartment. Well, the same thing is true of pretty much any material, as it turns out, including rock. So even though it is solid, hot rock will rise. Why? As you add energy to a substance, it expands. We're experiencing a change in density. Not in mass. Mass isn't changing. What's changing? Volume. Your material expands outward. As it expands, it increases volume. So our measure of mass per unit volume is changing while mass remains constant. Therefore, lower density. Lower density means an increase in this thing called buoyancy. It's the same reason why styrofoam and wood float on water. They are less dense than that water. So the hot rock from underground rises up towards the crust through the cooler rock around it. And as this hot rock rises up towards the crust, it starts to cool off. As it cools off, it gets shoved off to the side by the newer, hotter rock behind it. And so what you get is this cell of movement. Hot rising, cold falling. Hot rising, cold falling. Hot rising, cold flowing. And so you get these cells of moving rock underneath of the crust, and they make drag on the bottom of the plates above them and push them or pull them in the direction of that cycle. Okay? So when we have two convection cells that are doing this in opposite directions next to each other, moving in different directions, the plates on the top are going to move away from each other, making something like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where the plates are pulling apart and making space for magma to come up and make new plate material between them, adding to both plates. Where the cells are going in the same direction towards each other, like this, we get convergent boundaries, where the plates crash into each other. And two things can happen. One will sink under the other. We call that subduction. Or they will crunch high up into the atmosphere and make a brand new mountain range. That's where we get those. The only other option is not pulling away from or going towards each other, but sliding past each other. Try doing this. Ooh, it's like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time, right? If you are experiencing this sort of thing, excuse me, then they are rubbing past each other like this. We call that a transform boundary. Transform boundaries make a ton of earthquakes. Famous transform boundary you might know about, California coastline. Okay, so these are the three types of boundaries. Convergent, where they go towards each other. Divergent, where they split apart. Transform, where they slide past each other. That's today, folks. Any questions? You know what we didn't do? And you know what? Maybe it's a good thing I waited until the end because my online students probably don't care much about this. Before we leave, I would like to go around the room, everyone say their first name and their major and where they're from. Okay? Let's start over here, Scarface. It's on his shirt. I'm not being mean, okay? He willingly wore that shirt here today.
Ryan Valdez.
Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Valdez.
I have a pathway in business, and that's about it.
Ryan, business. Got it. All right. Cross.
I say my name and my pathway.
Your name and your major, yeah. And where you're from.
My name is Cross, and I'm taking a major in business management or business administration, and I was born here in Odessa.
Nice. Business administration. Good deal. Faith Valdez.
Wallace.
Fallis?
Wallace.
Wallace. Oh, okay, got it. And what's your major again?
STEM.
STEM. And where are you from?
The,
You're from here. Okay.
general studies
Hey, we could pay attention as people are talking. Thank you. Emily, and what's your major?
general studies.
General studies. And where are you from?
Corpus.
Corpus Christi. Oh, okay, cool. How long have you been here?
6, 7 years now.
6 or 7 years. All right. So it probably feels like home, I imagine, at this point. All right.
My name is Giselle, and my major is business.
Business. Great.
My name is Gavin. I think my current major is general studies, but I plan to major in astronomy.
And astronomy. Good deal. I think the guy that teaches astronomy is our physics instructor across the hall, Barun Gupta. Unless we've gotten an adjunct for it. And last I checked, he was the one that teaches it.
My name is Anik. I'm in general studies. I'm also trying to do astronomy.
Cool. Love it. We talk quite a bit about planetary geology in my class, in case you haven't noticed. So I hope you find that interesting.
My name is Anaia. My major is in business.
Business. Okay. And where are you from? You're from Odessa.
My name is Julian. My major is business, and I'm from El Paso, Texas.
El Paso. We got a lot of business majors.
My name is Omar Flores. My major is business, and I'm from Odessa, Texas.
Okay.
My name is Chris. My major is geology, and I'm from Abilene.
Abilene. Great. Let's start back here. And what was the name? Giovanni, right? Okay, and you're from
California.
where in California?
Series Modesto.
Okay, Modesto.
Like,
Yeah.
My name is Carlos. My major is business and business.
Business. Okay, Carlos.
My name is Javier. My major is STEM, and I was born from Austin.
Okay, you were born in Austin. Got it.
I'm
You're from
Jackson, and my major is STEM, and I'm from here.
You're from here.
My name is Sophia, and my business, I'm doing business, and I'm from.
And I got the next generation of business owners and Market Street capitalists out here.
My name is Angelina. I'm a business major, and I'm from Yes.
Okay,
My name is Remy. I'm doing STEM major, and I'm from here.
you're from here.
My name is Julia, and I'm doing a business major, and I'm from.
You're from here. All right. Got a lot of born and raised Odessa folks. Got a lot of business majors, a lot of STEM majors. Good to see. Oh no, he captured my microphone. All right. Well, I guess that's Diablo telling us it's time to quit. We're getting out about 20 minutes early today, but I kept rambling. We didn't really have a break at any point, so I guess that's only fair. Our next class time is on Thursday. Same time. It's going to be kind of another long one. There's going to be some lab time at the end, though, so just be ready for that. Are there any final questions before we split for the day? No? I don't know, sometimes the principals are real strict about you guys not going in the hallways until class time is over. If you have been instructed not to leave the class until 12:20, you're more than welcome to stay here. If you feel like that's not a problem, I haven't been told anything about that this semester. But if you have, I trust you to use your good judgment. Okay, but feel free to hang out here as long as you want if you don't need to go anywhere. All right, thank you, everyone. Keep it.